I was still a PA, I was driving a designer around. I liked her very much. I ended up going to LA and working with her a little bit after the show we did together. But she said, what do you ultimately want to do? And I said, I want to be a costume designer. And she said, well, you're never going to be able to do that living in Chicago. And in my head, I thought, yep, I am.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a costume designer for film and television. Right now I'm working on the One Chicago show, Chicago Fire, PD, and Med. I kind of fell in love with it when I was very young. I like to watch those kind of movies. I started school in a fashion design program and realized I really wanted to do costumes, so I transferred to Columbia. I ended up with this career because of Columbia. My teacher in my costume class when I graduated asked me to sew for her. She was designing shows at Northwestern, and there was a sign on the door for a TV show, and I just called it and they hired me. So that was the beginning of, I thought I would work in theater, and that's how I ended up in film and television. So I got that first job, and then that show got canceled, and the people I met on that show called me for a couple other things. And then I got a call to just basically drive a costume designer around, and I never turned anything down because things lead to other things and you meet new people. And that's what I did. I drove her around, and I ended up working on the show as a PA as well for her. And when the show ended, maybe 3 months later, I got a call from her to fly to Arizona and do a movie with her, and I ended up working with her for the next 8 years. She was my mentor. Kind of went up through the ranks. By the time I came back to Chicago, I had a 2-page resume. So yeah, I traveled a lot, and then when I got pregnant with you, I got a movie in Chicago, Ice Harvest, that Harold LeBray misdirected. And I did that the whole time I was pregnant with you. And then I got called for a film in South Carolina, and the producer was someone I'd worked with a lot, and he knew that I wouldn't go without you. So he called and said, I will fly your son and your mom, and I'll get you adjoining rooms for your mom if you come do the movie. So I said, yeah. So I took you to South Carolina to do The Strangers. Liv Tyler was the lead, and she had a son who was just a few months younger than you, so you guys used to run around the parking lot and play. I have a lot of wasn't famous when I work with them, and then you see them many years later, which is really fun. It's funny because you see what happens when we watch movies. I forget that I even worked with them, and I'm like, oh, I worked with Robert Downey Jr. That does happen a lot. Or I worked with Brad Pitt when he wasn't famous. And I got up one day, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go see Thelma and Louise. And I'm sitting in the movie theater, and all of a sudden this cowboy comes walking down the street, and it's the kid that was in this movie who was Brad Pitt. There were a lot of times that I interviewed for shows and had a much bigger resume than the people in LA that ended up getting the job, but they felt like the people in LA would be more talented. So it took me many years to overcome that. I always just say, be willing to do anything. I mean, I took projects where I worked, 18-hour days and got paid $25 a day. I didn't care, everything leads you somewhere else, and you learn something from everything you do. I still do. So I would just say, be willing to do pretty much anything and work hard. I think you were maybe 5 or 6 when you started taking your phone or my phone and making movies. You would even do what you didn't even realize was sort of claymation, where you would move your guys and take a picture and move your guys, and as long as I can remember, you were filming your friends and editing and using special effects. I could see how talented you were, and I'm very excited for you because I know what's coming.